Lois made it. Hello, Allison. Oh my.
Hey, Billy, how you doing?
I made it. This
Hi,
is great.
Jewell. Hi, Sharon.
Lots of new faces, lots of old faces. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Scott.
Hello.
Billy.
Hi, Jim. I see your picture there. Nice picture.
This is what I really look like.
There you go. Hey, Linda, long time no see.
Linda, hi.
How you doing?
You're on mute, Linda.
Not right now.
You're
Now we
good now.
hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we're expecting a big crowd tonight, so we're giving people a few minutes to come in. So thank you for all you guys who are here.
Thanks for all your emails, David.
Hi, Mara.
They're really great.
Hey, David.
How you doing?
I'm good.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. You're a lot less bushy than you were the last time I saw you.
Yep. The COVID beard had to go. I saw myself and a little too gray this go around. Hi, Nia. See your name. I don't see you.
Hi, I'm making toast for my daughter. She has the flu. I'll be back.
Okay.
Break a leg, Billy. I'll be judging you.
Thank you.
I'll be right back.
Hi, Joel. See your name there.
Hey, David.
Oh, hi, Bernice.
No way. Gina and Grant in the house. It's very exciting. Hi, Ashley.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you guys for your patience. We're people keep coming in, so we want to try to get as many in before we begin.
Hey.
And I see Carrie S. I see you're there, and I haven't seen you in about 1 million years. So it's nice to see your name. Hope everybody's feeling healthy and well while they're on here. It's nice to see people's faces and not a lot of masks, because I haven't seen faces in about a year. Hey, Andy. Hi, Darcy. Howdy, Joanne. I see you're here. Hey, Kathy. I feel like I'm a flight attendant. I know many of you I don't. Hi, Dave. I see you there. Oh, hey, Alan. Alan just joined us.
Hi, everyone. Hey, David.
Hi. Oh, there you are.
Hello. Here I am.
When somebody puts their picture on, they suddenly jump to a whole different part of the screen. This is great. So you guys know, as people come in, I will let you know, as you probably saw on this thing, that this is our 4th one in this series. So some of the people here are regulars. Some people are joining in now for the first time. All good. If you like this, you can check out the other ones that are on YouTube. Wrath, I forget the order we did them. Wrath, and then we did Gluttony in December. What did we do in November?
Pride.
Pride, excuse me. Thank you very much. Yes. So if you like this, you can check out those other ones, and we have more coming down the pike. Hi, Lori. It's nice to see you again. We got to give it a couple more minutes because I see how many are here and we're expecting some more. Hi, Ann. See somebody tuning in from the East Coast. Thanks for staying up late to watch this.
Thank you, Sharon.
And Michael. Oh, there you are. You just jumped. Hi, Mom. I see.
Hi.
My mom is here. But let's see.
Your mom is like
I'm
this?
telling you, everybody is here tonight to hear Billy. It's great.
I wasn't nervous until I realized your mom was listening. Oh, no.
We're bringing in all the big guns tonight.
Oh, my God. Does anyone have an Ativan?
Hey, Marty. One of our previous leaders, Marty Kaplan, is here tonight to join us, and see David Aronson's here. Welcome.
Marty did the first one of these on Wrath, and he set the bar pretty high. Thank you, Marty, for nothing.
There's Billy. Hey, Billy.
Good to see you, my friend.
Let's give it just a couple more minutes because I see people keep coming in. Hi, Helene, welcome.
Thank you, Nate.
So why don't we give it one more minute and then we can jump in, and then the latecomers will just be a little late. Usually at this moment, everyone would be coming in and complaining about the traffic, but everybody is in their den or wherever they are.
Watching the news.
Watching, let's not get into that because we will spend the whole hour on that. But yes, maybe watching the news for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hi, Lois, welcome back. All right, I think we maybe should start. Billy, tomorrow, does that sound good to you? And I'll tee us up.
Great.
Okay, welcome everybody, and more people will be coming in, but I said we get the show on the road. My name is David Levinson. I know a number of you, and I am the founder and executive director of Big Sunday. I know a lot of you are old hands at Big Sunday. Some of you are new. Very briefly, at Big Sunday, our mission is to connect people through helping. We see the world not as haves and have-nots, but as haves and have-mores. We believe that everybody has some way that they can help somebody else. And now, certainly more than ever, it's more important than ever that we all look after one another. We have no religious or political agenda, even when that's a challenge. And we're here to find common ground between all of us. So I thank you very much for being here tonight. This is part of our series, the number 4th in our series, called 7D, the 7 Deadly Sins in Today's World. As I mentioned, we've had wrath and pride and gluttony. It's great to have Billy here to do envy. Before I introduce Billy, I want to give you a heads up. If you're interested in Big Sunday, check us out at bigsunday.org if you haven't already. And I'll give a shout out for our big event on Monday for MLK Day. We usually have a big street fair We're moving it all online. It's going to be a Big Sunday block party and clothing collection. Go to bigsunday.org for more info or email me, david@bigsunday.org. It's Monday morning from 11 till 12. It should be a lot of fun. And at this moment, more than ever, I think it's a great time to remember what Dr. King fought so hard for, and that we all need to double down on that. So I hope you'll join us for that. Okay, so let me introduce my buddy Billy. I'm gonna read you from this email that you saw, so I'm sure not to forget anything. And by the way, this is being recorded, not just the introduction of Billy, but the whole thing, just so you guys know. I need to mention that. Billy wrote the Oscar-nominated screenplay for Captain Phillips, which, sidebar, I think is one of the best movies of the last 25 years, for which he won the WGA award. He also wrote, directed, and executive produced Showtime's The Comey Rule, also excellent, which had the biggest debut of any limited series in that network's history. Billy's films as writer, co-writer, or writer-director include The Hunger Games, Richard Jewell, Shattered Glass, and Breach. His current feature projects include 68, the true story of Olympic medalist Tommie Smith and John Carlos, and The Silent Wife for Nicole Kidman. Billy is a member of the AMPAS Board of Directors. He believes in democracy, justice, and the Dodgers. Billy has also been an important part of Big Sunday in about a million ways for many years, and he's far too modest to tell you all the ways he's helped. But you can also email me and I'll tell you. I'm very happy to say he joined our board of directors this year, and I'm also very happy to say he's my friend. He's just a great guy, and it's a treat for him to do this tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Billy to talk about envy. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you everybody for coming. It means a lot to me. Let's dive in. Envy's a great one. By the late 1990s, I had been writing professionally for 10 years, and my career was an utter embarrassment to me. The scripts that I was most proud of hadn't been made, and the scripts that had been made were utter humiliation. All around me were writers who were far more successful than I was, and it ate at me. I found that I had to cancel my subscription to Variety because every time I read it, I was rooting hard for utter strangers to fail. But there were 5 writers whose success particularly pissed me off. They all had flashy credits. They all were writing high-profile projects. They all seemed to be friends with movie stars. My resentment was total. For some reason, and I still don't know why this ever occurred to me, but I set a very strange goal for myself, the oddest mountaintop ever. I told myself that I wouldn't be happy until I had been asked to rewrite each of those 5 writers. It was petty, so small, an attempt to turn writing into a contact sport. But one by one, I got them all. After years of toiling and climbing, I became established enough to be asked on various projects to rewrite each and every one of those 5 screenwriters. My personal mountaintop of pettiness reached. And guess what? It worked. I felt better immediately. When I got that 5th one, I felt a sense of relaxation coursing through my entire body. There was a pain that was suddenly gone. That series of meaningless victories had somehow set me free. So before I castigate envy as the deadly sin that we all know it to be, I have to acknowledge, though it embarrasses me to say it, that envy more than once in my life has been fuel to me, and it has yielded a myopic level of focus. I'm in good company there. The envy between Paul McCartney and John Lennon led to some of the greatest music ever written. John Glenn and Alan Shepard envied one another all the way to outer space. Freud and Jung needed their competition. The Washington Post and the New York Times push one another still today. Joe Frazier's envy of Muhammad Ali forced both of those men into feats of incredible athleticism and courage. And I needed those 5 writers, as ugly as my envy of them had been. Some etymology is required here because people use the term envy interchangeably with jealousy and covetousness. And although there's a lot of overlap between the 3, they do not mean the same thing. If you think your spouse is cheating on you, you're jealous. You're not envious. Jealousy connotes a suspicion of unfaithfulness. And if you hate your crappy car for not being your neighbor's new Tesla, you are coveting. You are not envying. Coveting refers to tangible possessions. Envy refers to a wish for someone else's status, skill, accomplishments, popularity, or fame. Envy is also a wish for a lessening of their status. Ned Tannen, who was once the president of Universal Pictures, revealed more about envy than he knew when he said, "In show business, it's not enough for you to succeed. Your friends must also fail." Bingo. But scripture tells us that even God suffers from jealousy. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. He or she doesn't want to compete for your fealty. But God does not suffer from envy. God is entirely unthreatened by your accomplishments, your status, or the size of your Twitter following. So what makes envy a deadly sin? Well, that tracks back to God too, in a very big way. Satan was once an honored angel in heaven, but when God needed a consultant for how to make man, he turned to his son, Jesus, and not Satan. Thus began Satan's envy of Jesus, and that was that. That envy turned into hatred, and all hell broke loose, literally. What other sin can claim that historic level of destructiveness? Envy is so deadly that if they did a ranking of the 7 deadly sins and envy wasn't ranked number 1, envy would kill the other 6 sins just out of sheer envy. Envy is my favorite of the 7 deadly sins because it has really stood the test of time. The words wrath, sloth, and gluttony feel archaic now, of another era. Lust feels kind of dated too, and pride feels like one that's been on the list for a long time, but probably should have been dinged many, many centuries ago, in the same way that Gone with the Wind keeps popping up in greatest movie ever conversation. But envy, like greed, is modern as hell. In fact, I would argue that envy is more relevant today than it has ever been before. There is now an official psychological condition called Facebook depression. Do you know what causes it? Envy. Our children are consumed by their need for more followers than their friends have, more clicks, more likes. They long to be influencers. Social media is built on competitive metrics. So yes, envy is very 2021. Every day we see COVID just wishing that it could be the Spanish flu. And envy is everywhere, surrounding us like air. None of my friends are gluttons. None of them are sloths. None of them are greedy or wrathful, but all of them envy somebody. Envy corrodes. Some say envy is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It certainly is toxic. Look what it did to the Wicked Queen in Snow White. She's all powerful. She rules. Okay, she's got some vanity issues, mirror, mirror on the wall, etc. But as soon as her vanity becomes envy for a nobody who has a fan club full of dwarfs, the queen's entire life becomes focused on destroying a stranger who cannot harm her in any way. And in pursuing that quest, it's the queen herself who is destroyed. Envy denies our uniqueness. We cannot live our own life if we are spending all day in someone else's. It is a wish to become bigger that instantly makes us smaller. In many ways, envy is the ultimate sign of ingratitude. Envy blinds us to the blessings that we've been given by fixating our energy on someone else's blessings. This is like giving God the finger, and it pollutes us in ways that are not easy to diagnose. Famous saying, envy is the religion of the mediocre. F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway envied one another in a pithy, literary kind of way. As Fitzgerald once said of his rival, Ernest was always there to help the man on the rung above him. I love that line. Envy has rules. It requires a feeling of entitlement. To envy, we must believe that on some level we deserve the good fortune of the person that we're envying. Envy of a great home run hitter named Mark McGwire, who was taking steroids, made an equally great home run hitter named Barry Bonds begin to take steroids, and now neither of them will ever make it into baseball's Hall of Fame because all of their God-given greatness has been forever tarnished. Envy makes us cheat, lie, cut corners. It makes us slander and libel people. Without envy, there would be no plagiarism. There would be no copycat killers. There would be no plastic surgeons. Want to see what naked, unreasoning envy looks like? Check out the way Tiffany Trump looks at Ivanka, or the way Ted Cruz looks at anybody who has a friend. The American dream at both its healthiest and most brutal is a symphony of envy. We see, we want, and we strive to acquire. That built a country, for better or worse. The arts are filled with great tales about envy. We'll touch on a number of them. But let's start with the best envy story ever. It's called Amadeus. Peter Schaffer wrote the screenplay from his stage play. The film is number 8 on my all-time top 100. I wish I had written it. Is that envy? We'll get to that in a second. But for right now, let's take a look at 7 minutes of genius. By the way, if the sound seems a little bit ahead of the picture, Forgive us, it may be slightly glitchy. We're going to do our best. This is the first time we've ever done one of these in real time. Take it away, tomorrow. Okay, best picture, best director, best screenplay, best actor. There are so many levels on which this movie is perfect. I could do an hour just on the movie. Salieri is the perfect envier. He's talented enough to recognize Mozart's genius, but nowhere near talented enough to replicate it. That's another envy rule. To envy someone, we must be enough like them to picture ourselves inside their life. Without that, envy can't exist. For example, as a male, there are scores of women that I admire, and there are many that I revere, but there are none that I envy. Salieri could imagine being Mozart. Barry Bonds could imagine being Mark McGuire. But first-year film students don't envy Steven Spielberg. He's too far beyond them for that. They just admire him. A first-year film student would, however, envy a second-year film student, especially if that upperclassman is signing with an agent or meeting with producers. That's part of what makes the film All About Eve so remarkable. Eve is a nobody who goes to see Margot Channing's play night after night, hoping just to meet her. But the second they do meet, Eve begins scheming to steal Margot's career and fame with a sense of entitlement that can only be described as delusional. Of course, the true genius of All About Eve is that Eve's envy for Margot is so poisonous that it breeds envy in Margot herself. She becomes obsessed with Eve's youth. It nearly destroys her. Take a look. That is so off the charts. Great. I don't even know what to say. Betty Davis. Oh boy. Envy brings spite. Spite brings lies. Lies are death. Eve winds up stalked just as she stalked Margot. Meanwhile, Joseph Mankiewicz, who won Oscars for writing and directing this classic, was utterly consumed with envy for his alcoholic brother Herman, who wrote Citizen Kane. I envy anyone who has never felt envy. As Teddy Roosevelt once said, comparison is the thief of joy. A shared ancestor of all of ours named Abel found out about envy the hard way. Abel was a shepherd. His brother Cain worked the land. Once they appeared jointly before God to offer the fruits of their labor. God liked Abel's sheep more than he liked Cain's soil. Next thing you know, Cain is taking his brother Abel for a walk in the forest, and then goodbye Abel. Siblings have been fighting for parental favor ever since, with intense resentment that can transcend the bonds of family. Just look at the story of Joseph, who was pushed down a well and sold into slavery by his 11 brothers simply because he was the favorite of their father, and presumably because he would one day have an entire Andrew Lloyd Webber musical made after him. Envy is an admission of failure or inferiority. Envy leads us to criticize, to tear down, to sabotage the person that we envy. It turns us into rumor spreaders, backstabbers, conspirators, plotters. It makes us seek confederates in people who share our envy, or sometimes in people who are friends of the envied one, folks who suddenly and unknowingly find themselves abetting our treachery and thus becoming contaminated by it. In that way, envy is robbery. Sometimes it's murder. Witness Iago from Shakespeare's Othello. Iago was furious that Othello bypassed him to promote Cassio to lieutenant. His envy is so all-consuming that he sets out to destroy Cassio and the Moor, which he achieves by using jealousy to drive Othello mad. Envy kills without conscience. Our politics has long been driven by envy as much as by ambition. John Adams envied George Washington. Aaron Burr envied Alexander Hamilton and killed him. John F. Kennedy's career happened because of envy. His father, Joe, was consumed by his envy of the Protestant Boston Brahmin class that he knew as a Catholic he would never be able to join. So he pushed his family into politics in an attempt to win legitimacy and power. First his son, Joe Jr., then Jack. Absent that drive, JFK might simply become a great-looking lawyer. Lyndon Johnson envied Kennedy utterly. That envy took on a new dimension when JFK was martyred in 1963, and it grew stronger still when Jack's brother Bobby was assassinated in 1968. Handsome ghosts are impossible to compete with. Richard Nixon's envy of JFK was legendary. They entered the House of Representatives together in 1948 and began as friends, fellow anti-communists from opposing parties. But Kennedy's charisma and easy celebrity became far too much for the uptight Quaker-born Nixon to bear. And his envy of Kennedy and Ivy Leaguers in general became maddening. So as president, Nixon surrounded himself with non-Ivy Leaguers, real people. That's what made him trust John Dean, who had gone to Colgate. Ironically, it was Dean who brought Nixon's presidency down. In Great Britain, Margaret envied Elizabeth for getting to be queen, and Elizabeth envied Margaret for being freed from all of the responsibility that a monarch must bear. Envy works on crowds too. How did Donald Trump rise in politics in 2016? Simple. He played on the resentments of non-college educated white voters against liberals, the media, the coasts, and in some cases, people of color. Trump fanned these resentments into a status war, a master class in the art of inciting envy. The liberals are laughing at you. They're opening our borders so the Mexicans can take your jobs. They're letting the Chinese steal from you. They're in cahoots with the fake news to lie to you, using your hard labor to fund their graft and corruption. It was designed to weaponize shared grievances, and it worked. Status competition always creates envy on a massive scale, often with tragic results. Just witness the events at our Capitol last Wednesday. The Rwandan genocide happened because the Hutus envied the Tutsis. Hitler envied all Anglo-Saxons. He especially envied America for its official embrace of eugenics in both policy and law. Mussolini, in turn, envied Hitler. Lenin envied Trotsky. Stalin envied Lenin. Today, Putin envies Stalin, and you know who envies Putin, especially now. Envy is what happens whenever we keep score about anything. Meet Rod Rosenstein, about whom I just wrote in a miniseries called The Comey Rule. Rod entered the US Attorney's Office in 2005 and found it to be more like high school than you would think. The cool kids were the lawyers that other lawyers wanted to hang out with and hear great stories from, legal stars like Rod's contemporary, Jim Comey. Rod knew he would never be Comey, just didn't have Comey's presence, and that hurt. Years later, Rod asked Comey, who by then was the director of the FBI, to come to Baltimore to address the lawyers in Rod's office about leadership. I chronicled that moment in our miniseries. To me, it's a scene about what Salieri and Mozart would have been like if neither could write music. Significantly, 6 months later, Rod would be Jim Comey's boss, and he would write the memo that Trump would use to justify Comey's firing. But that act ultimately destroyed Rod, not Comey. Here are some more characters that are famous for their envy. Scar in The Lion King, Scarlett O'Hara and her insane ramblings about Melanie in the wildly overrated Gone with the Wind, and witness two characters from broadcast news who envy everything about one another. Every minute, 5,000 minutes of content are uploaded onto YouTube. Think about that. 5,000 minutes, an endless tide of input, far too vast to be consumed. Envy is inexhaustible in that same way. We will never run out of people to envy because our envy is not really about the people that we're envying. It's about us and the 5,000 ways per minute that we feel empty. So how do we conquer it? How do we put out this eternal fire? Well, maturity helps. So does a true gratitude for the blessings that we've been given, a sense of being full. This idea that what we are and what we have is finally enough. Envy dies when we look inward and we see content. Humility weakens envy. So does genuine admiration. Among the many reasons why I revere Peter Schaffer instead of hating him for his brilliance is that the version of his Amadeus script that actually got shot was his 46th draft. One hears about that kind of grit and determination, and what can one say, but you earned this, good for you. Admiration makes us aspire. Envy makes us destroy. Admiration makes us work harder. Envy turns us into Salieri. The ultimate antidote for envy, of course, might be something else entirely, or so says the greatest writer who ever lived. One so great that there's no point in envying him. All we can do is sit back, admire him for his genius, and thank God that he lived it all. That, of course, was Shakespeare. And he wrote what, for me, is the greatest insight into envy ever in his 29th sonnet. Yes, the guy wrote sonnets too, in addition to all those plays, the show off. Sonnet 29 tells us that the ultimate cure for envy is love. Here goes. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like one more rich in hope featured like him, with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy, contented least. Yet in these thoughts myself almost despising, happily I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. Maybe that's it. Maybe in the end, all we need is love. I'm going to remember that if I ever again find myself rankled by the successes of 5 of my contemporaries. I will count my blessings, which are many, and consider myself fortunate. You should do that too. We all should take the counsel of the bard on this one. He spoke in eternal truths. But I would caution you to remember, William Shakespeare burned with envy for his contemporary, Chris Marlowe. Thank you.
If you want to unmute so Billy can hear all your claps.
Oh, no, don't.
Yay.
So let's talk. Hey, whoa.
Bravo, bravo.
Very
Thank
good.
you. Who wants to talk about envy?
So now is the portion where the discussion starts. So basically, tell us what you thought. Did you like what he said? Do you agree? Do you disagree? You can raise your hand. There's a button there.
no,
If
no,
you
I
can't
don't
find
want-
it, just raise your hand.
I definitely don't want people to say they liked it or didn't like it. Let's just talk about the subject. It's
Take-
fine. I'd like to hear what your insights about envy are. What did I leave out? What did I miss?
You left out how Jan envied Marcia. I was waiting the entire time for it.
The grotesque oversight. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, Marcia.
I don't know how I missed it. Completely right. Thank you.
And I will say that I disagree that Trump envies Putin. I would say Trump envies Obama.
He
And
does actually, and you know, it's funny. A funny thing about Trump is he is actually one of the few people in human history who has all 7 of the deadly sins. You could do a speech just about Trump with each one of those sins. In terms of envy, yes, he envied Obama in a disgusting way. But you can see Trump actually as a metaphor for Queens wishing it could be Manhattan. That really is the story of Trump's adult life. And he symbolizes that in a powerful and highly destructive way.
You said that admiration causes people to aspire to something, but envy causes them to destroy.
Mhm.
Yet the envy you had inspired you to rewrite those 5 writers that you admired. So is envy entirely negative?
I don't think it was for me. I was really lucky in that way. I think one of the advantages of being poorly parented and being a completely empty emotional shell like me is that occasionally things get twisted in the right way and your ambition can drive you to do all kinds of productive things. And in this case, I was able to channel my envy into a very, very positive, but I'm not proud of the fact that that's what it took me.
Okay, thanks.
so, Billy, could you say again, what is the difference between envy and jealousy?
Again, if you think your spouse is cheating on you,
Right.
that's jealousy. Jealousy connotes a suspicion of unfaithfulness. So when people say, I'm so jealous you get to go to Disneyland, they're actually envious. That's a misuse of the word. And you don't envy your neighbor's car, you covet your neighbor's car. Covetousness has to do with tangible possessions. Envy is specifically about lusting after, for lack of a better term, somebody's skill or accomplishments or fame. And specifically and significantly wanting theirs to be lessened. You know, that old expression, you don't get taller by cutting off other people's heads, but they do get significantly shorter. And you do start to feel that after a while, and that's part of envy too.
So what is the opposite of envy? Is it disdain?
Well, to me, the opposite of envy is contentment.
Uh,
If you are feeling content, it's impossible to feel envy. Because by definition, you can't envy if you feel like what you have is enough. That's why I was talking about that feeling of emptiness versus content. If you feel full, if you feel like who you are is enough, then you're not going to be liable to feel envy.
Hey, Lois, did you have something to say?
I did actually. And I thought that that was absolutely marvelous
Thank you.
and made me reflect upon and dive deep into envy within myself, which actually I'm very fortunate in that I don't really have it that much. I might have done in youth, but I don't have it now. But I have to say that I have been the person that someone envied. And it was someone that I had helped within my own profession. And it was the most extraordinary thing. I mean, it was almost an All About Eve experience. And this person still attempts and says that we are friends. But I rolled it out, this experience of what had to be envy, in that if there was anyone that I'd worked with, then that became the team. If there was anything that I'd said, then it was emulated. So much so that I worked with a team of ADs who said, who worked with this person previously and said, you work exactly the same in how you handle things as so-and-so. And it was the most extraordinary experience. And I still don't know to this day how I feel about that. I mean, I suppose one should be flattered, but it was incredibly hurtful.
No, it's not. I don't take
It
it
was
as flattery
awful
at all. You know how there's a litmus test that I apply to whether or not envy is working in that direction, which is, how do you feel when you're sharing good news with that person? If you're doing it in sort of a couched apologetic way, that means you know they envy you and you don't expect them to be happy for you. And if that's true, then you've got a polluted relationship. If it's someone that you can just say, oh my God, there's this incredible thing that happened for me, and they're going to jump up and down just like you are, then you've got a clean friendship. But that's the test that I apply.
Thank you. That's really helpful, because you're exactly right. I couldn't divulge anything that had great meaning to me on the inside.
You know, there's a quote about that from Benjamin Franklin, which I absolutely love. He said, if you want to know a woman's faults, praise her to her girlfriend. I thought that was like just a staggering insight about how envious friendships work. And at one point I had it in the speech, but I cut it because I thought we were long. But Benjamin Franklin absolutely got that one right. Who else?
Martin, you have your hand up?
Yeah. Billy, one of the things that you made so clear in your talk and in the film clips is that what I took away from it was that envy is inherently dramatic. Someone wants something desperately, which is the basis of all good drama. And that was so clear in all the clips.
That's true. And by the way, I had to leave something out, which is Peter Shaffer wrote another incredible play, which became a movie called Equus. Yeah. And Equus is actually about envy too. It seemed to be a consistent theme for Shaffer. Shaffer was driving in the English countryside one day and he heard on the radio, this was in England, I guess that makes sense, he was in the English countryside. And he heard on the radio a story about the arrest of a boy who had blinded 6 horses. And Shaffer being Shaffer, he went out and wrote a play, not about the boy, but about the psychiatrist who treated him. And it turns out the psychiatrist who's played in the movie by Richard Burton is this guy who has never had a moment of passion in his life. His name is Dysart, as in dissecting hearts. And he starts to treat this boy and he starts to talk about how he's envious of the kid who blinded 6 horses, because the kid had this incredible, almost sexual passion about horses, which led to his blinding of them. And he said, that's the stare that I keep getting from this kid. The stare is saying, at least I've galloped. When did you? And that's an extraordinary thing for a person treating another person to say, but it goes back to that idea of envy is just by its nature dramatic and filmic. You know, when you go to make a movie, so much of what you're doing is about the subtext of what characters are feeling. It's not really about the dialogue. And Sharon Lawrence is on this Zoom, and she can tell you that when you're on a movie set, you very rarely talk about the words. You talk all the time about what the words mean. And when a scene is about envy, the scene is always about the person who's not talking. It's always about Salieri looking at Mozart and just smoldering inside. And that is inherently dramatic. If you give that to great actors, they just kill it. They just kill it.
Sharon, you have a note?
Yeah, it struck me, well, something that's bothered me for a long time is how inherently competitive our culture is.
Yes.
And envy must be the engine behind what advertisers and sports teams and broadcasters, and it's a poison.
It is absolutely a poison, but it can be fed by the person who's being envied. One of the things that's so great about Amadeus is that Mozart is the perfect object of someone's envy because he's so talented and he seems so ungrateful for the talent that he's been given. And so that becomes infuriating to someone like Salieri. It's harder to be envious of someone who says, oh my God, I'm so lucky. I've been so blessed. What can I do to share my gifts with other people? Tougher to be mad at that person than Mozart, who seems like it was just his due. And that's, again, part of the dynamic that made Schaffer just such a genius.
On that clip you showed, Mozart was very aware of the effect he was having on Salieri. He was
delighting in it.
Yeah, delighting in it. He was sticking it to him.
That's right. And when Salieri talks about that as a narrator, he talks about that laugh of Mozart's. And he says, that was not Mozart's laugh. That was God laughing at me through this insidious little creature. That movie is just off the charts. Fantastic. I love it. Who's next?
Billy, Desiree put in the comments, once envy is self-realized, does it diminish?
It can. It can. In a healthy person, I would think so. Once you recognize that what you're experiencing is envy, it should diminish. It didn't in me. I knew very well that I was envying those other writers, and it was just fueling me. And part of it, by the way, in fairness, now that I've knocked myself, in fairness was that with those particular writers, I thought they were lazy. I didn't think they were actually that great. And that was part of what was so infuriating to me. So there was I'll give it 10% righteousness in there. The rest of it was just ugly.
Nate, do you have your hand up?
Well, you kind of answered the question just now, Billy, but I was thinking that if envy is a poison, it didn't seem to act fulfilling your envious spirit, didn't seem to act as a poison on you. You actually felt good when you were finished.
I know. By the way, this is Nick Kazan, who wrote Reversal of Fortune, and I completely envy that he wrote that script. It's pretty amazing. Again, I don't know what to say. I'm a particular combination of psychological factors. Envy helped me.
Well,
I don't know what to say. It's embarrassing.
That's one thing that makes you a good writer, particular combination, right? Yeah.
Thank you. But envy can drive people to do really dumb things. I mean, I'm old enough, some of you may be old enough to remember the pictures of Richard Nixon walking on the beach at San Clemente. He did that because JFK had so famously strolled on the beach in so many pictures, and it made him so insane that he wanted pictures of himself walking on the beach, but he left his shoes on. He was just a dipshit in every way. And his envy had blinded him in that way and had confused him in that way. And that's part of what can happen. We can also, if you would like, we can talk a little bit about the story of David, who fought Goliath, and King Saul. King Saul was the first king of Israel. And there was a shepherd another shepherd named David, who also played the harp. And so they brought David to King Saul to play the harp and relax him. And David did. But then what King Saul found out was what everybody has found out since, which is that chicks really like guys who play music. And all the women in the palace really dug David. So when this horrible monster named Goliath came to attack the city, King Saul sent out David by himself to take on Goliath because he thought Goliath was going to squash him. But David had a slingshot, and the slingshot blinded Goliath, and David conquered Goliath. And now not only was he a cool musician, he was the guy who had conquered a monster. So he got even more chicks. So King Saul went completely bananas and sent him out on a quest. And the quest was he had to go, I forget, it was either to the land of the Philistines or the land of the Samaritans. I forget where it was. But the order was, you have to go and you have to bring me back 100 foreskins. And he figured that, of course, would get David killed. David came back with 200 foreskins. The guy was just, he was unstoppable. And it made Saul so insane. And they wound up going to war with one another. And of course, David won. But that is a biblical story about envy, from the jump, and how it blinds people's judgment.
I know Nate had a hand up, and also Marty. I also see Wendy. Who'd like to take a-
Well, first of all, I should mention that they were having a buy one get one free sale on foreskins, so we kind of had an edge there. But without naming names, have you had the opportunity since then, may I ask, to ever talk to the 5 writers about how you used to feel, and have any of them have you gotten friendly enough that they've changed your perspective with them, or?
I've actually become friends with a couple of them, and I've never told them how I felt, and I never will, and I will never tell anyone those 5 names.
Okay, right, no.
So Billy, you talked about how you felt at that point.
Yeah.
And I want to give you another angle on that story, because I met you when I was an executive at Disney.
I remember.
And I envied you.
No way.
Yes. I was stupid enough to think that the writers had it made, but but that just shows you what I didn't know yet. But it struck me that you were just in the catbird seat, and I really couldn't wait to not do what I was doing and do what you were doing.
Oh, that's like, oh, Henry. I mean, that is so ironic. I understand it, but no, you did not need to envy me at that point in my career. My career literally was an embarrassment to me for the first, I want to say 13 years of it. At that point in my life, I would very, very occasionally golf. And if I would meet someone on a golf course and they would say, what do you do? I'd say, I'm a writer. And they'd say, what kind of writer? I'm a screenwriter. And they'd say, have you written anything that I've heard of? And I would say, no, because I just couldn't bear reciting my credits. And that was a terrible way to live. I felt like I was not making a contribution to the business that was supporting me. I was not leaving behind anything that was of value. And it was a terrible feeling. There was one point at which I almost quit. And I told my wife I was going to be a fireman. And I said, if I'm a fireman, at least maybe I'll do something for somebody. Maybe I'll save a life, or I'll get a cat out of a tree. But I'm not accomplishing anything right now. And I was making a living. It didn't change for me until I directed for the first time. I made a tiny little independent movie called Shattered Glass. And it was the first time that I could ever say to the world, okay, if you let me write and let me direct, this is the kind of story that I would tell, whether you like it or not. This is actually an expression of what I think I'm able to do. And that changed my life forever. It changed the way that Hollywood treats directors is so profound that they treat you differently on the next movie, even if you're just writing. Just the fact that you've directed at any point gets you in a club that most writers will never, ever understand.
Can I just add one note? you have such an encyclopedic grasp of envy that I suspect you know this, but I was just going to add my favorite quote about envy. It's a poem by Edwin Arlington Robinson. It's a very, you know that poem? It's a very short poem.
I know that poet.
An Old Story. It's a very short poem and I'll read it.
Please.
Strange that I did not know him then, that friend of mine. I did not even show him then one friendly sign, but cursed him for the ways he had to make me see my envy of the praise he had for praising me.
Wow.
I would have rid the earth of him once in my pride. I never knew the worth of him until he died.
Oh my God, thank you very much. That's fantastic.
My envy of the praise he had for praising me is just about as sick and wonderful as it could be.
Oh my God. Yeah, he was awfully good. He was awfully good.
Hey, Billy.
Yeah.
Vinny, I have a question for you. So,
Vinny?
what about
Vinny?
people that, hi.
If you could
What
hold
about
on, Wendy's been waiting for a while. Is it okay if we have her first and then you, Vinny?
Sure.
Thank you.
No
Wendy?
Thank you. I was going to say he can finish if he'd like to first. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to this, Billy. I don't know that I can properly articulate my question, so please allow me to fumble a bit. But do you think that you can envy a trait that someone else has that you actually consider to be a negative trait, but perhaps necessary? So for example, if a person is very good at masking who they truly are, but you feel like masking emotions or parts of yourself that maybe you're embarrassed by would actually be a useful trait to have to help you succeed in other areas of your life, for example. Does that make sense at all?
It did make sense. It's a really profound question. It's such a profound question that I don't want to answer it. I don't have a really well thought out answer. Like for example, could I admire Donald Trump's ruthlessness? Because there are moments in my life where ruthlessness might be useful to me. I couldn't.
Right.
Personally, but that may be that I just find him as a package to be so loathsome that I wouldn't allow myself to envy any part of him. And it's different at 57 than it might be at 37. At 37, I would have been a lot more susceptible to that. I really have to think about that. Could I envy a negative trait in someone else that has profited them in some way?
Or perhaps the ability to detach yourself from looking at it as a negative trait so that you could incorporate it into whatever this is why I'm saying I'm not doing a really good job.
Very good job, but I'll tell you what the trouble would be for me. The trouble would be for me, we have in our brain, we have what's called a limbic system, which is the amygdala and the, oh shit, this other part of our brain. But anyway, it's the part of our brain that assigns values to things. That it puts an emotional valence on everything that comes before our eyes. Like a bear, that's bad. A child cooing, that's good. It gets tagged inside the limbic system. And I think my limbic system is a little hyperactive because I judge everything. And it's very difficult for me to judge something. Once I've tagged something as a negative, it's very difficult for me to put that aside and say, yeah, but it really is useful. And to be honest with you, people who don't do that, I envy, because it's a lot easier to go through life if you're not tagging everything as either good or bad or right or wrong. Those are very, very rigid constructs that I find really hard to walk away from. I know this is not an answer to your question, but your question.
No,
it's so deep that I don't have an answer for it.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
I guess I just look at it like I can be analytical about something, or like a person I just despise for many reasons, but can say objectively, this trait could be useful, or look at how that person has used it. Their ability, for example, to mask themselves completely, mask that negative trait that maybe you see in them, but nobody else does.
Okay, well, if we go back to Salieri and Mozart,
Yeah.
Salieri couldn't be burning any more deeply with envy for Mozart. But there's an astonishing moment at the end of that movie where Mozart is lying in bed, kind of dying, and he's dictating a musical to Salieri, who's just transcribing it. And Mozart says, I never knew that you liked my music. And Salieri in that moment says, I tell you, you are the greatest composer known to me. Like at that moment, for him to break down and actually tell the truth about what he sees in Mozart, it's a bit of an answer to your question, because what it means is that as much as he envied Mozart, there was actually admiration in there too. And that's crazy making for someone like Salieri.
What's crazy making for me is thinking the reverse, that it's a negative quality that you're glad you don't have in many ways, and yet wish you could detach, I guess, and have that quality. Anyway, I'll stop talking. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Vinny.
Yeah, Billy, what I want to ask you is, have you had anybody close to you that you felt was envious of you, and how did you deal with that? You don't have to disclose who, and just share that. I know I've had that experience several times over, and I'm just curious, you must have had that. Someone somewhat close to you that you felt, and how did you deal with it?
I'm not an overly confrontational person, so that's a really tough one for me, because in my heart, in those moments, you want to say, look, we have a polluted relationship. I'm feeling some really weird shit from you. I don't think you're really happy for me when nice things happen. And so I don't really think we have a clean friendship, but I don't have the nerve to say that usually, because for me, when I am envied, and it sounds presumptuous to say this, but when I'm envied, the feeling I have is guilt. I feel shitty for the other person. I feel like my existence is painful for that other person. And it's really difficult for me to add to their pain. So I don't confront. A part of me shuts down, and that person doesn't get the best part of me. That person doesn't get the most honest part of me. And this is not something that I envy in other people, but I really admire in other people, their ability to say, we have to discuss this.
Right.
We have to make this thing clean. I've never had the emotional courage or freedom to do that. I wish I had.
Now, sometimes it's not obvious, and you find out later on, and you start piecing it together, and then you find out, wait a minute, that was going on, because they get close and they act like, okay, going along, but then behind they're doing things, or they're acting as a buffer to create, and you find out later on. So just curious if you had that.
I know, and our business lends itself to that frighteningly easily, and we all have to watch it. We all have to watch it, and part of that is the competitive nature of the business. I mean, I've never been in the shoe business. I've never been in the lamp business. They may be like, a bloodlust of competitiveness too. I don't know. It's arrogant of me to assume that I'm in the most competitive business of all time, but I'm telling you, it is the most competitive business of all time. And that brings out the worst in everybody, because, as our terror rises, our intelligence drops, and it becomes much tougher for us to assess what we're actually doing and what we're actually feeling, and how it's impacting our behavior. Who's next?
I actually, Billy, if you don't mind, we're coming into 8:15. So.
Oh, we should shut it down. Okay.
Does anyone have any last questions? Billy, was there anything you wanted to say?
I have one quick question.
Oh,
Billy, thank you for making this into the series. I love this book.
Thank you.
For the first time in my life, I watched Citizen Kane. And Trump reminds me of Citizen Kane across the board, to me, from what I saw.
He lacks Kane's intelligence.
It was when Getty was forced in the showdown between Kane and his rival boss. Kane really, his character, he really changed. That's when he became really hateful, envious of Getty and boss. So to me, I just saw a similarity between Trump and Kane.
Yeah, but you know, one of my favorite moments in Citizen Kane is, you know, he's built this opera house for his second wife, and she does the opera, and his best friend is writing that critical review of her, and Kane finishes the review. Donald Trump could not do that. At the point of a gun, Donald Trump could not do that. I'll leave you with this. I'm terribly touched that you guys all were here. I really, really appreciate it. And it's an absolute privilege to me to be able to talk to you guys, particularly about something that we all share. Envy, like gravity, is batting 1,000. Envy never loses. And we all have to watch out for it. I still do. I'm 57 and feeling as blessed as any human who ever walked the earth. But talking about it helps. It's a monster that grows in the dark. So be aware of it. And again, thank you for your attention tonight. I'm gonna go have Chinese food now. Does anybody envy me?
Thank you, Billy. I'm very grateful to you. Great job. That was just awesome. Thank you so much. And for all you do for so many. Thank you guys all for coming tonight. And if you like this, come back on February 10th, just in time for Valentine's Day. We're going to be discussing lust with my good friend Jim Holmes, who's been on this call.
And everyone here, please support Big Sunday. It is the most amazing charity in the world. There's nothing I won't do for Big Sunday. So please help. Thanks, folks. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.